Dear viewer, we wish you a pleasant journey through this thread of answers. If you've ever asked the universe for some kind of sign and got it clear as day, what was it and how did it go? All my life, whenever I went to the beach I had wanted to find an intact sand dollar. I had found lots of pieces, but never a whole one. When I was in my mid-30s, I went with a group of friends to the coast. I was walking alone along the beach in the moonlight close to midnight. I was feeling very sorry for myself in the dark, and really lonely, even though I was with my friends that weekend. I had just started thinking the thought, wouldn't it be a great sign right now to know that I'm loved if I finally found a sand dollar? I had barely formed the thought when I looked down, and right at my feet was an intact sand dollar. Universe told your insecurities, I'm gonna pay you one sand dollar to duck off. The universe was pulling a Ricky. My then girlfriend was having a really awful week. I felt terrible for her, which made me realize how serious our relationship was because empathy is not a strong suit of mine. She wanted to take a trip to the Grand Tetons to clear her head. She wanted to see a moose on this trip, but it was August, so relatively unlikely since they tend to move to higher elevations that time of year. I had never seen a moose in the wild. Before we left, I thought if we see a moose on this whirlwind 72-hour road trip I will take it as a sign I should marry this girl. Sure enough, right in the middle of the day, on one of the busiest trails in the park, is a great big bull moose hanging out in the lake. Married 5 years this year. Why would you choose the moose over your girlfriend for marriage? I decided to kill myself about the age of 13. Life sucked, and I planned to go home from church that night and off myself if there was no direct intervention. Out of nowhere my aunt stopped me and said, I feel like you need to come home with me. And I'm still here. Damn harlot. I hope you are doing better now. Next week I'll be 30, something I never thought I'd be. Ups and downs, but so many great things I'd have missed otherwise. I really don't like my job, and I've been daydreaming about what I could do. I just needed a place to be able to do it. The next day I get offered to house sit for a couple years in this big Japanese house that has a storefront in the front. There's a perfect space to do what I would want to do. I would live rent-free and be able to save up to buy my own business visa here. I wouldn't need to work in this job anymore. Make sure there is no one in the basement. Ha ha ha, good reference. Had to choose between MCDS and Taco Bell. I flipped a coin and chose MCDS. Friend got TB and had food poisoning. For a solid minute I thought TB was referring to tuberculosis instead of Taco Bell, and I thought that was pretty harsh punishment for not getting MCDs with a friend. Yeah. Both tuberculosis and food poisoning might be a bit overkill. I was in the depths of despair. I had lost my great job, had to travel 2 hours every day with heavy tools each way to a temporary job I was doing. Sitting on the bus, thinking my world was over, and it all kind of got to me all at once and I began to tear up, not wanting to bawl my eyes out in public. I held it in. So I asked for something, anything that could show me that life wasn't worthless. A lady I didn't see must have how bad I was, or maybe it was just coincidence, but just after I cried out in my head, I heard the words, everything is going to be okay. It saved my life. I was always curious about lottery tickets but never wanted to indulge in it. One day in a grocery store, I told the universe, yeah, I'm going to buy a lotto ticket now, not the grand bumper ones, just a simple scratch one, for the first time in life. If I win a prize, I'll take it as a sign from you and never buy it again. I bought a ticket for $3, scratched it and won $500. I smiled and donated $250 of the amount. Enjoyed some good food multiple times with the other $250. Never bought or looked at a lottery ticket again. Will never do. You won $500, which was then well spent. You have this story to pass on when appropriate. Life is made up by the small moments like these. Share and enjoy. Well done. I had asked the universe for a sign of good and friendly people really existing out in this world. I know, it's kinda stupid, but I have struggled with making friends that weren't toxic, and I felt like I just wasn't destined to have great friends. About 2 days after I had asked for a sign, I went to my local park to do my daily routine of sitting down, smoking my cigarettes and reading, and for some strange reason, a pair of strangers came up to me and introduced themselves. We ended up talking with each other for what felt like hours, and eventually, I had asked them why they came up to me, and the guy said, oh, we made a deal to see if we could make any new friends, and we did. You're a new friend. After, we all walked and got some cookies and ice cream and chilled again, by the river this time. They both are now my closest friends, and it all started because I was at the right place, and at the right time for them to come up to me. I strongly believe that it was the universe's doing and am so grateful for it. This wasn't really asking for a sign, but I was going through a lot and in a really crafty and dark place, like the kind of place I honestly wasn't sure I'd survive. I was teetering on the edge of despair and genuinely going down the path towards doing something insanely drastic. I basically just asked the universe for help one day while in the middle of another crying episode, and I had this strange, sunny feeling kind of leak into the darkness I was harboring inside of me. The next day, by chance, I met my group of friends on a video game I played regularly at the time. They lived in an entirely different city and had entirely different lives from me, but we all just clicked. It took a month or two for me to settle into that friendship and understand that they were gonna stick around, and they've been my best friends for 3 years now. Some of my best memories are from that first summer that I knew them. I genuinely don't think I would have survived that time in my life had I not met them. I was feeling incredibly alone and I was trying to come to terms with a lot of things all at once. I'm infinitely grateful for them, and I can't help but think that the universe was listening that day when, as a last-ditch effort, I asked it for help. I was in a bad time of my life. I grew up quite naive and I'd like to say sheltered. So when my first boyfriend broke up with me, it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. He was my first and I took it very seriously, so it made it 1000x worse for me. I already had depression, but this knocked me onto suicidal territory. I wasn't sleeping, lost 20 pounds BC, I wouldn't eat, I felt sickly, weak, and just didn't want to be here anymore. I felt like no one cared, I just wanted someone to hold me and tell me that it'll be okay. I like to drive and blast my music when I'm upset to unwind, so I started to drive on the highway and I decided I was finally going to end it. A few minutes before I was going to gear my car off the highway into the lining of trees, I looked in my rear view mirror and saw an ambulance driving behind me. I had never seen an ambulance on the highway that didn't have its signal going and immediately broke down and cried. The ambulance was just cruising behind me. I took that as a sign that the universe did care and that I was significant. So I drove home to my mother and told her I needed help. I was taken to the hospital, put on medication and went to therapy for my underlying issues and depression. A year and a half later I am off medication, no longer needing therapy, and currently thriving. That ambulance truly saved me that day. I got home from my best friend's funeral. The whole time sitting in the funeral home asking him or God for a sign. When I got home I turned on the TV and his favorite song was playing on Much Music. I'm currently worried about my best friend. Honestly, being my only friend that could just kick open the door, say what's up effers type stuff. It's annoying to see him going down this path of drinking because of some personal stuff in his life. But I hope you're doing well, also not a friggin' idiot. Kick down his door and return. Having a good time sober is a lot easier with friends. I'm not superstitious at all, but my uncle is. When my nan passed, he went to see a fortune teller who told him that anytime our family sees white feathers around, that's Nan's way of showing us that she's there. I thought it was a load of bullcrap and forgot about it. A few years later I was at a music festival. Everything was coated in dirt and dust being churned up by thousands of people's feet. Even the air was so thick with dust it was making it hard to see and breathe. I was on the edges of the mosh pit when I started to have my first panic attack. I'd never had one before, didn't know what was happening to me, and I was terrified. I felt like I was being crushed and like I was the only person in the world at the same time. I remember desperately thinking, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be here alone. I crouched down in the middle of the dirty, dusty crown, and when I opened my eyes there was a single white feather on the ground right between my feet. It was perfectly white, no dirt, not stepped on or anything in a mosh pit. I stared at the feather until I could get my breathing under control and get out of there, and I still have that feather. I was walking. What would have been a 4-hour drive? And I was walking. I straight up begged for a car to stop and pick me up, and literally seconds later a woman stopped who was traveling all the way to where I was heading. Same town. 4 hours away. What are those odds? Similar thing happened to me. A guy picked me up when I was hitchhiking and was going to drop me off at the train station so I could catch a coach to my hometown 4 hours away. As we were chatting we realized we were heading to the same town. He was a delivery driver doing drop-offs along the way. He offered for me to stay with him in the car. I helped him map out his deliveries and he bought me a pub feed and dropped me off outside my parents' place and came in for a cuppa and met them. My wife and I had been considering getting a second cat for some time without reaching any conclusion. Then, as I was walking back to the apartment one evening, a young feline popped up out of the drainage beside the sidewalk. Basically, he just looked at me and said, "Let's cut to the chase. I'll be moving in with you now? You need a cat." I'm a very cute, completely adorable kitten. The only problem I see here is that you might not be smart enough to recognize this opportunity. Be your best self right now, dude. So I looked at him and said, "I can't make this decision solo. Let me go get the wife." He just looked at me and nodded his head like, "Go on, I'll wait." Considering that she just decided that today was cat bath day, he may be regretting the decision, but I'm completely okay with the way things have gone over the past years. I loved every minute of this story. Sounds really stupid, but I was visiting my nanny and she had just spontaneously told me her sexual abuse story. I was shocked and hadn't ever told anyone mine, so on the drive home I jokingly told myself, if there's Y in the next number plate I see on the way home, I'll tell my boyfriend my story. Probably 9/10 cars had a Y on them. I think it was just a coincidence, but at least I got to tell my story and I don't regret it. First off, I truly believe in signs. Second, whether it was or wasn't a sign, I'm glad you told him. I had gotten a job at a retail store and went in for the orientation and to-do training. The vibe was kind of off in the store, but I ignored it. I got to the back where the computers were but couldn't shake the feeling of being uncomfortable. In my head I said, "All right, universe. If I'm not meant to work here, show me some kind of sign. Make them send me home for the day or something." About an hour later, a huge storm rolled in and shut off the power in the store. The manager came in and said for me to go home since the computers weren't working and I couldn't do my training. A couple months later and I was working at a new job that I absolutely love. Was there really anything off about the company in the end, though? I think they mean off in terms of just having a feeling that it isn't the right job for them. My son passed away and he sat at the kitchen table in shock. I couldn't really believe he was gone. I asked him to send me a sign so I'd know he was still with us, in spirit if not in body. A few minutes later all the lights in the house went out. I didn't believe it was him, so I even checked the fuse box. I almost called an electrician, but for some reason I couldn't bring myself to do it. It was just the lights. The power point still worked so I could cook and the fridge was on. It stayed that way for 2 days until I eventually said, okay, I know it's you, and they came back on. I was so overwhelmed with grief at the time. This seemed like nothing, but now I see how crazy it was. I get this might be hard for some people to believe, but I really don't care if anyone believes it or not. I just needed to know he was somewhere else besides in the ground, because he was only in his 20s and it just wasn't fair he was gone so young. You should never outlive your children. Wife was insisting I work the garden on my day off. I begrudgingly started but said to her, if it rains I'm out. Right on cue there was a huge clap of thunder and lightning strike up on the hill about 2 miles away. I did a little robot shutdown dance and Dad Moon walked back into the house. Every time one start the lawnmower it starts to rain. I take it as a sign. Not sure my neighbors do. My mother passed away when I was a baby, so I have no memories of her, and my dad rarely talks about her as it was very painful for him. I had a very abusive childhood and don't really speak to my family much, so I'm very much an independent loner. In a moment of weakness seeking support, I asked the universe and my mother for guidance, and that if she really is there watching over me, to wake me up at exactly 3:33 a.m. that night. She proved she was there for me that night. Woke up randomly at exactly 3:33 a.m. I found more strength that night and I continue to seek ways of connecting with her. Can testify that bond is strong, and remember that you actually share real selves from your mother. She is alive within you. Listen to that small voice telling you to take good care of you. I just spoke to the universe and said some things, got on Reddit to distract me from a troubled mind, and I find a question like this right on top. How's that for some cherry pie? Same. I'm sitting outside with tears in my eyes asking for some guidance and come across this. Not a coincidence, I would say. I asked the universe last night for a clear-cut sign to help me decide whether or not I should do something. Now I see this question. I can't quite tell if it is the sign I was looking for though. What would have been your answer or question? Leave it in the comments below. Slap that like and subscribe button for more, and check out the link in the video description for even more answers. Peace out, and catch you in the next video.